This is a SVRN. It's a four-wheel drive rear hinged flipper. Or it's a grabber. Or it's a grab and lift. Except when it's called SVRN, which is just like the other configurations but without a hat. All of these robots share the same base platform I've been developing for around a year now, the SVRN project. In this video we'll get into why I've been doing this and how you can build one too. The flipper, the pusher and the grab lift all started out life as separate independent projects with their own foibles and issues. That meant that at each event each robot had its own set of spares and its own set of problems would tend to crop up. I realised that it would make much more sense if they had a common set of spares and each robot was pretty similar to the other ones so that I'd be able to fix it quicker. The second benefit is increasing my development speed, so instead of splitting my time across 3 projects, I'd focus it on one. Finally, I wanted to make this project open source, so this could be a perfect starter robot for someone wanting to build their own, and it's something that could grow with them over time as they add active weapon modules in and get to try out different weapon types. So let's make this thing, and the first step is 3D printing. For the chassis, the wheels and the base plate I'm using a material called PLA-ST. It's a super tough variant of PLA made by eSun and it's substantially more durable than the normal variety. It's very easy to print and prints on normal PLA settings quite well on my Prusa Mini. While I usually leave the filament settings well alone, there are a few small changes I make to increase the print strength. Firstly, I'll up the wall count a little bit on the outside of the part, so more perimeters, and secondly I'll run a slightly higher infill density than you typically would. These parts have got to stand up to combat, so they really need to be tough. Also recently I've been trying using the brick layers Python script, so it offsets the layers very slightly and should increase strength. I don't know if this actually works properly yet because I haven't tested it fully in combat, so it's one of those things I'm trying out here and we'll see how it goes. Next up I'm printing Overture TPU in red. This is for the side armour and generally this stuff prints quite well on the Amazon Basics TPU profile in Prusa Slicer. For this filament I tweak the same settings but in a slightly different way. I tend to lower the wall count and the infill density as I want a part that's a bit squishier and can absorb impacts better. One issue I have found with TPU forks is that because of the step over on them it can be quite difficult to get under robots and get robots to slide up the forks. To combat this I've started using the variable layer height in Prusa Slicer to print the very bottom of the fork very close together. This seems to give an ability to get under other robots much better than a 0.2 printed layer would. To understand the physics behind this, imagine sliding a box up a flight of stairs. If the stairs are steep and largely spaced, the box will fall in between them and get stuck, whereas if they're close together, it'll slide up nicely. With the parts now sliced, I drop the files off on my printer and start them running. Next up is putting the heat certs into the chassis. I use these as they're much more durable than threading directly into plastic. To pop these in I use a soldering iron. There are purpose-built tools available for this, but for now this is a quick and easy way of getting them in. I generally set the iron to about 180 degrees, so a little bit lower than what you might typically print the PLA at because it gives a little bit more time to work and get the insert positioned correctly. Next up I'll pop the wiring loom in. So the loom for this robot features 4 N10 motors from Wranglebox, these are the 3000 RPM ones. For motor driving and control I'm using the Malenki Nano, and I've also soldered to the Malenki a little servo cable as well. Now this is important if you're intending to use this robot as just a pusher and you might want to use it as a flipper later. It's fine to put this connector in, but make sure you tape over the contacts so they don't short out anything inside. Now come the captive nuts, which are used to hold the side armour on. So I'll generally just press these in by hand. If you're having a little bit of trouble and the print's a little bit tight, you can use an M3 bolt in from the side and then pull them into the housing. That works pretty well when I've had slightly messier prints. Another nice tip with these is once you've got them seated, pop a little bit of Kapton or electrical tape over the top of them. That way if the armour bolts ever get sheared or if they come a little bit loose and then it comes free, it doesn't drop into the chassis, rattle around and short anything out, it stays in place. The next step with those captive nuts in place is to pop the power switch in. This just goes in with a couple of M2 self-tappers. Next up, the wheels can be pressed onto the robot. This can be a little bit tricky as sometimes the prints are quite tight, so I tend to use an old motor to loosen them up a little bit first, remove them and then put them onto the robot. If you are really struggling, sometimes a little bit of heat can help from a hairdryer or a heat gun, but if you go down this route, be very careful to not melt the wheels. At times it can also be helpful to slot an Allen key behind the motor to hold it in place and stop it sliding back into the chassis when you press it on that last bit. The tyres are pretty straightforward, I just slide them on over the top of the wheels. Historically I'd used a little bit of super glue to keep these in place, however recently I've stopped doing that as I find the side armour retains them well enough. Talking of side armour, that's the next bit to go on. This is retained by 3 M3 bolts, 2 short ones and 1 longer one at the front. I use aluminium bolts for these, generally because they can be anodised and they look quite nice. If you want to save a little bit of money, you can use some steel ones, but you will pay a small weight penalty for it. For this build, I've chosen to use the long fork side armour. There are a couple of options available. There's a small set of wedgelets, which is generally quite good if you're running it as a pusher only, and then there's a kind of curved set that, if you're running it as a flipper, help deflect horizontals and stop the side of the flipper arm getting caught. At this point we have some options. We can leave the robot how it is, attach the bottom plate, and we've got a pusher. We can put a metal plate on the top for if we want to defend against hammer saws, or we can add one of the weapon modules. In this instance I'm going to be fitting the flipper. The servo cable is threaded through first, and then the module itself is held in place with 4 M2 screws into the heat certs, and also with washers on to try and distribute the load across the TPU to stop the module pulling off. All that's left is to pop a battery in, pop the base panel on, and then it should be ready for an event. The first event I wound up taking the SVRN based Elevron 2 with SCAR 9. The event is based in Sheffield. Elevron's draw for this competition is relatively horizontal heavy, so I opted to swap out the forks for some slightly more protective armour. SCAR runs the fight night format of qualification, so I have 3 fights to prove myself and see if we can get it into the final tournament bracket. Elevron's first fight is a robot called Danger Cone. This is a highly unusual robot. It uses a large metal propeller at the front to move around the box, and then has a wheel at the back to direct it. This robot hits incredibly hard, so this would be a really good durability test for a first fight.
3, 2, 1, fight!
For a debut fight, that went really well. The 3000 RPM motors were a little bit of a handful to get used to. I was able to absorb the hits where needed and eventually get Danger Cone in position where I could flip it on its head and won the fight. Up next is a more conventional horizontal spinner called Hex. Given how little damage I'd sustained in the previous fight, I was quite confident in my armour config and was pretty happy to get stuck into this one.
3, 2, 1, fight!
Hex is up to speed, but Elevron Red so fast across the arena sends Hex reeling. You can see how much energy is in that spinner of Hex by the way it's throwing itself and its opponent around. There's Elevron with the shove, looking for that angle where he doesn't get hit by the spinner ideally. Flip and a miss by Elevron. And another flip. Hex is stuck on its back. He has to spin down in order to get back on his wheels. And now in that position, Hex isn't going to be able to use that weapon. So Elevron's going to be looking to take advantage of it. Hex not having a great time there inverted. And Elevron maybe wanting to use its flipper as a grabber there. And he does. He gets the grab.
1 minute remaining.
We're halfway through this fight. And Elevron is looking to maneuver that very, very fast robot into a grab on his opponent. Hex may want to look for a way to right itself, but it's quite difficult to do so. There's the grab. And Hex goes down the
30
pit.
seconds remaining.
That's fight 2 and win 2 for Elevron. I have to admit, I've been really impressed with things so far. It just seems to shrug off any damage, and there's no worry just sending it face first into a spinner. It seems completely happy with it. The final qualification fight is against a robot called Janet Street Porter Judgment Day. I have to admit, I wasn't quite sure how to approach this one. It's another quite unusual and unconventional robot, so I figured I'd just send it and we'll see what happens.
Are we ready? Revron in the red.
3, 2, 1, fight!
With that short and sweet fight, we are 3 wins out of 3 for our qualification fights. That's been an excellent debut for Elevron, and I'm really pleased with everything so far. Now, unfortunately, this is where things get a little bit complicated, as one of my other robots, Revron, had also gone 3 for 3. Given that a few other roboteers had also qualified 2 robots, it became impossible to avoid same team matches for the finals, and as such I had to drop one of my robots. Looking at what was remaining in the competition, it seemed to make the most sense to keep Revron in, so unfortunately Elevron's day was done here. I think an excellent debut all the same, and a solid showing for the SVRN platform in general. Since SCAR 9, I've taken Elevron to 7 further events, and it's only now, about a year later, that the chassis is needed replacing, which I think is a real testament to how durable this chassis can be. In that time, it's picked up a few podiums and even a win. If you fancy building your own, there's a link down in the description to the print files, which will be hosted on Printables, and I've also put together a step-by-step instruction build manual. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to see more builds like this and get updates as I release further modules, feel free to subscribe and like the video.